It's great to be back with you. Today, going to discuss the 2021 6th District North NCGOP Convention. 6th District NCGOP Convention. This was the only district convention that I attended this year. Basically, it was because when you look at the way the calendar is set up, is that March is all your county conventions. There are 100 counties in North Carolina. Most of the counties, probably about 95 of the 100 counties, there are some counties that are disorganized, but 95 of the 100 counties have county conventions. And these conventions are scattered throughout the month of March. It could be pretty much on any day of the week, although I do not know of any county in the 10 plus years that I've covered conventions, I do not know of any county that has had a convention on a Sunday. April is a little bit different. We have right now 13 congressional districts in North Carolina. Now, as of next year, we're going to have 14 congressional districts. And according to the NCGOP plan of organization, these congressional districts must have their district convention in the month of April. These are congressional districts. Most of the congressional districts are quite large because North Carolina is a big state. So most of your congressional districts, for example, District 3 out in the east part of the state, you might meet in New Bern, but you might have people drive at least 2 to 3 hours who live in Elizabeth City or who live down towards Jacksonville or Dublin County or somewhere in that big district. So because of that, most of your district conventions, about 90% of them, happen on a Saturday. Well, guess what also happens usually in April? Easter. Most of the time, there's sort of an unwritten rule that districts should not have a district convention on the same weekend as the Easter holiday. Even though Easter is on a Sunday, and technically you can have a district convention on Saturday, still it's just not the school of etiquette and public opinion would have a field day if they actually did have a convention on Easter weekend. But there are some districts, like the 6th district this year, that actually have their convention on a weeknight, or I should say on a Thursday night. Now, as I said before, the reason why I have not attended as many conventions this year as I wanted to in years past was, of course, because of the whole COVID thing. My employer requires that I give at least 3 weeks notice if I need to request a day off from work. And I did not know in many cases whether or not we would have county and district conventions. Most counties and districts have had conventions this year despite the COVID stuff. But still, you don't. I decided to scale back, though, and just focus on my county and my congressional district. So, this event happened back on April 22nd at the Revolution Academy in Summerfield, just a little north and west of Greensboro. And it was a very easy, about a 6-7 minute drive for me from my home. Wonderful location, right off the I-73 corridor. Probably easier to get to if you live in Rockingham County than Greensboro, but still right off of an interstate. So very accessible for anybody in the district. And again, 6th District, as of right now, 2 years ago, it was a meandering collection of red counties like Alamance, Randolph, Rockingham, kind of this crazy shape. But then the courts ordered that district to be thrown out. It got replaced with a district. Now the 6th district currently is all of Guilford County, and then a little nose stub to the left side of Guilford County into the a very how should I say, very kind of fairly impoverished, there we go, area of Forsyth County. So we started the convention just about on time at 6:32 p.m. Of course, we go through the opening prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem. Our chairman, Tina Forsberg, gave the chairman's report and just said that the judicial races coming up are very important. Have to go in with the same enthusiasm I've had in 2020, which is basically we have 4 Court of Appeals seats up and 2 seats currently up on the state Supreme Court. Of course, the GOP has a majority in the state Court of Appeals, but they do not have the majority in the Supreme Court. But if they win back the 2 seats that are up in the Supreme Court, then they will flip that majority. And also, very likely next year's district convention will be different, probably different location, different counties participate, just because, again, we had court order redistricted about a year and a half ago, and now we have to have the actual census redistricted. That's coming up later this year. Okay, so then after that we have the appointment of convention officers. The sadly former mayor of Guilford County, B.J. Barnes, now Mayor of Summerfield, B.J. Barnes, was the convention chairman. And then the convention secretary, Cornelia Gross, parliamentarian Scott Cumby, who I last saw about in person 2 years ago, and I must say that he's aged a little bit in the last 2 years. You know, with this COVID-19 thing, you go a while without seeing people, and I've noticed that some people have gained some weight. There's also some people that have aged a little bit. I think it's because of the beard, because 2 years ago he didn't have a beard, so that's probably why it was. I don't think it was anything poor on that for Mr. Cumby. Sergeant Arms Billy Queen, and the tellers, no, not bank tellers. These are just if a vote is required on any rules or plan of organization resolutions, you have the tellers go around the room. And by the way, this was at a gymnasium, and yes, COVID-19 protocols were followed. I should have put that disclaimer at the very beginning, but there you go. The tellers were Myra Bumgardner, Todd Rourke, and Jackie Perkins. It says on the program Jacques Perkins, and I kind of want to go to Jack Perkins, the former narrator of A&E's biography back in the 90s. And there was even a little SNL parody that they did of Jack Perkins too. But no, this was a woman named Jackie Perkins who was one of the tellers. Let's see. Then we had Speaker of the House, North Carolina House, that is, Representative Tim Moore. Give a brief talk on election integrity. Now, North Carolina, we have a good amount of election integrity. It's not perfect. could use improvement, but it's pretty darn good right now because we have paper ballots. And not only do we have paper ballots, but they are traceable paper ballots, which is we have a good paper ballot program, better than other states. And I will say that if you compare when I lived in Maryland and I lived in Florida, they used touchscreen voting machines where you would just hit a button for your thing. It takes a little bit more energy to actually take a pen and complete an arrow. It is a little bit more work for the voter, but still at the end of the day, you will know in the state of North Carolina that your vote counted and it's not lost somewhere. And it's certainly not a hanging Chad scenario like we saw in Florida 20 years ago. Also, state legislature has taken action to reduce the number of anonymous drop boxes. Now, what I mean by drop boxes, well, these are locations where, for absentee ballots now, you get an absentee ballot in the mail, fill it out. You can either mail it back in your mailbox, or you can take it to a location within your county that's a drop box. Now, some of these drop boxes are in fairly conspicuous, fairly not so great locations, hence the name anonymous drop boxes. Want to make sure drop boxes are in safe, secure locations, and not just, in the middle of the ghetto, right next to a pawn shop or something. I'm not trying to say pawn shops are ghetto, but you've driven around. If you drive around most cities and towns, you can tell that you're kind of in the not so great part of town because you have a lot of pawn shops or you have a lot of auto parts stores. But then again, if you watch the show Pawn Stars, that pawn shop is in a fairly good, decent part of Las Vegas. So it is what it is. Okay, and then probably the most important thing is that now if you decide to file an absentee ballot, you fill it out, okay, you have to have a witness signature with it. So that means that if John Smith decides to vote for Donald Trump for president on October 20th, 2020, he has to have a person other than him actually witness him fill out the absentee ballot, sign it, and then return it. If the absentee ballot does not have a witness signature in the state of North Carolina, they review the ballots. And most of the time it's thrown out because it didn't follow the proper protocol. Unfortunately, in a lot of states like Pennsylvania and Georgia, you just had absentee ballots from Joe Schmo, fills it out, sends it in, didn't have, nobody knows if Joe Schmo actually voted for Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever for this particular absentee ballot. Next up, candidate talk. Now, I promise that, unlike some other videos I've done in the past, this is going to be a fairly shorter segment. First up, U.S. Senate. We have candidate Mark Walker, who's been endorsed by Congressman Madison Cawthorn of the 11th District, also Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Oh, excuse me. Ooh, what was that about? Marty Cook, also running for the U.S. Senate, is a local candidate in Greensboro. He's in the TV and film business, works out of Liberty University in the charming town of Lynchburg, Virginia. Graduated from the Citadel. Also has a master's degree in communication. And then we have Lee Haywood running again for the 6th District U.S. House Representative seat. This time he's going to have another opponent in the race. It is Mike Owens, and basically his key word is, it is in his campaign, is Constitution. Then we had some guy named Randy Powers. And then I don't know what he was running for, because he didn't know how to speak into the microphone. Very, very hard to hear what he was running for. I have no idea. But I still put him in this. I would still say, let the record show Randy Powers is running for something, and he attended the 6th District Convention. And then we have Billy Queen, who served for 7 years in the High Point Police Departments. He also has worked as a Border Patrol agent and is going to run for Guilford County Sheriff coming up in 2022 against the Democrat incumbent, Mr. Rogers. Danny Rogers. No, not Fred Rogers. And then the City Council nominees. Katie Rasabi, the at-large seat. She basically said that the key to winning a seat on Greensboro City Council is the city must turn out more than 11% of the votes. And then we had Connie Baker speak on behalf of the candidate Tony Wilkins. Now, Tony Wilkins is going to run for one of two seats. He's going to run for either District 5 or he's going to run for an at-large seat. It all depends on how redistricting goes. But two things that Tony Wilkins wants to do. Wants to make Greensboro safer and also a more business-friendly community. Now, let's talk about the courts. Richard Dietz, running for Supreme Court. He argued a Supreme Court case about 10 years ago on gun rights. Won that case, too, by the way, I will say. He gave out some sort of card of... It was a business card for his campaign. And on the back of that card, I don't have it with me right now, but it had a nice little drawing of his... him actually arguing before the Supreme Court. Then we have Trey Allen for the Supreme Court. He currently serves as the General Counsel for Chief Supreme Court Justice of North Carolina, Mr. Paul Newby. And Trey Allen should be known that he is a conservative professor at UNC Chapel Hill, one of very few brave endangered species, but a conservative professor at UNC Chapel Hill nonetheless. Him and his wife homeschool 5 children, and his slogan is "Don't go astray, vote for Trey." And then we heard from Mark Meckler, who is currently the interim CEO of Parler, which is a conservative-friendly social media site. Of course, Dan Bongino used to head that up, and now he has his radio show, and he's getting ready to take over Rush Limbaugh's, the late Rush Limbaugh now. Rush Limbaugh's, is he already done? Is April or May is when he starts? I don't know, but he's taking over for Rush Limbaugh in that 12 to 3 time slot. But Mark Meckler, excuse me, went from lawyer to lobbyist. Well, he's registered in 45 states as a lobbyist. But he talked a lot about the importance of states' rights, federalism, and what he was getting at, of course, was the Article 5 of the Constitution and the Convention of the States. The topic that on the program was First Amendment and big tech. So he veered a little off course there, but his talk was interesting to listen to, nonetheless. Then we heard from RNC committee man from North Carolina, Ed Broyhill. He said something near and dear to my heart. He said, we need to get younger people involved in the party. I couldn't agree more, Ed. And he also said, help accommodate them to events. Ding, ding, ding. Well, I will say to Mr. Broyhill, thank you. And I hope that you can work something out with the young Republicans to where we can actually be able to go to the RNC committee meetings. Maybe not every single meeting, but at least maybe once a year. Maybe the RNC, you could help subsidize the young Republicans, help us pay for hotel, travel expenses to go to these meetings. They're held all throughout the country for that, and in that aspect. Then we had Jason Simmons speaking on behalf of Michael Wiley, the chairman of the NCGOP. Jason Simmons is the new executive director of the NCGOP. This was actually his first public speaking appearance as the NCGOP ED. He said that the NCGOP is heading up a new voter integrity committee. And also, he says that the state convention in Greenville is going on as scheduled. And aiding that decision is the fact that the NCGOP was very happy that Roy Cooper, and one of the few times that they've been happy with Roy Cooper, is that he plans to ease all COVID restrictions by June 1st. What happens on June 3rd is, the state convention begins, and even right now, even though we still have restrictions in place, you can still have up to 50% capacity in a conference center convention space. Last year didn't have that. It was zero, goose egg, and we had to go virtual. And even worse was the fact that Cooper, I was sitting on a conference call, right? This was about 2 weeks before the state convention was supposed to be in Greenville, and Chairman Wiley tells us all everything's good to go with the convention. We've talked with the Governor Cooper's Mandy Cohen and everyone on his COVID staff, COVID reduction regulation staff, whatever you want to call it, and everything was good to go. There were going to be protocol, social distancing, mask, everything. Well, 10 days before the convention was supposed to begin, Roy Cooper said, no, you can't do that. Nope. So they had to go virtual. Now we have hear from Susan Mills. She's running for vice chair of the NCGOP, and I've talked about her at length in another video on this channel you can watch. And she is from Fayetteville area. She's a current high school teacher, and that's the Cliff Notes version. You want the more extensive version, watch the 2021 NCGOP convention preview and vice chair. I'll also talk about another person who's in the race as well. Then we have the credentials report, We had 95 delegates attend, quorum 48, and 2/3 majority is 63. What I should have done was call for point of information, ask for the delegate breakdown by county. We had 95 people total attend from Guilford and Forsyth County. Half the chairs in the gymnasium were set up for Guilford, half the chairs for Forsyth, and Guilford County had, I would say, 2/3 of the delegates, and Forsyth had a third. And of course, I went into the gym, did not know this, and had plenty of empty seats around me. And then it's like, I figured, oh darn, I'm on the wrong side of the room. Then I'm going to go over to the other side, and where I have a lot more people in traffic around me. So it's like, oh, could I've, future, it'd be nice just to have the basic delegates sit in this section, guests sit in this section. Don't worry about this whole county by county breakdown. The only time when that's really necessary is at a state convention, because at a state convention you're dealing with thousands of people, or at least hundreds. Okay. Next, of course, we had the adoption of the rules, the treasurer's report, the approval of the 2020 virtual, because the district convention for last year was virtual. The minutes from that, adoption of the plan of organization, and then we had the nomination chair report. And basically, we had candidates nominate a slate. The slate was voted in by acclamation, which means that there was no opposition to the slate. So we had a group, the slate become the officers. There was no turnover except for we have a new assistant secretary. And this didn't surprise me anyway, because last year we had a new, we had to be redistricted by the court. And so these people just came on a year ago, and because of COVID, we were not able to have the events that usually you can have in a district setting. You had to have all the meetings, all the executive meetings online, so it was just very hard to have fellowship and social time with that. But I do want to congratulate on their re-election Tina Forsberg, chairwoman, vice chairwoman Linda Petroff, Scott Harkey, second vice chair, third vice chair our buddy Marcus Kinley, Secretary Cornelia Gross, Assistant Secretary, and a very special welcome to Fred Daniels. Welcome to the team. Kathy Lawler, Treasurer. Steve Golomowski, Assistant Treasurer. So again, thanks to those people who decide to spend another term in service for the 6th District. Okay, now at-large delegates. Now, the at-large seats for the district are a group of people who serve on the executive committee for the district and the executive committee for the state. So you get to attend a bunch of meetings and vote on stuff, and it's a lot more fun than it sounds, I promise you. And guess what? Yours truly got re-elected to another term on the state and district executive committee. Yay! Without opposition. There are two schools of thought on the at-large elections. What happened was my county chair, David Gleason, sent out an email to everybody currently who is currently an at-large district delegate. Okay, and he basically asks. He says, "Do you want to continue to be an at-large delegate for the district and state executive committee? Yes or no?" You pick yes. You get on the list. And then David Gleason, he sends the names of 12 people to the Tina Forsberg, the district chair. And there was no more than 12. So we were voted via acclamations. And same situation in Forsyth, except it's 6 members for Forsyth County. And the way the state party gets these numbers, because the numbers of at-large members vary by county. Basically, it's one member per 8,000 registered Republicans in that particular county. So if you're a really small county like Alexander County in the mountains, you only have like one. But if you're a large county like Wake County, you could have 20 members serve as at-large members to your state and district executive committee. And again, when I was in New Hanover, we had 4. Guilford's a little bit larger in New Hanover population-wise. We have 12, and I think Wake is like 20, 25. Same with Mecklenburg. It's well into the 20s, I believe. Okay, so 18 people got... I was not able to get the names. I believe most of them were carried over from last year. So I'll go ahead and read... because I think most of the same people are going to continue to be on the state executive committee for District 6. The names are Connie Baker, Dina Barnes, Aaron Berlin, Sarah Blackburn, Jeffrey Cox, Robert Crawford. Gee, who is that guy? Diane Dowdy, Robert Eaton, Kathleen Flanagan, David Gleason, Clarence Henderson, Yolanda Hill, Sam Johnson, Miles Jones, Michael Logan, Chris Meadows, Adam Newsom, Jim Smith, Celeste Stanley, Robert Watkins. Some of these are also just 6 district officers too, and those people that I have not mentioned yet are Kurt Lawler, R.N. Shalomer, Julianne Val Tuto, and Charles Winfrey. Okay, and where are we at now? Resolutions. Almost done, I promise. 4 resolutions. The first one is a resolution ensuring the constitutional rights of the people to fair, legal, accurate, and timely elections. I will not read the whole amendment here, just a couple of the whereas clauses. Whereas NC Attorney General Josh Stein and NC Board of Elections Chair Karen Brinson Bell, appointed by Governor Roy Cooper, conspired with Democratic operative Mark Ellis to push a false election narrative that caused massive absentee by mail voting when they constitutionally disregarded previously legislated laws concerning the treatment of absentee ballots. And the Elias Stein Bell conspiracy created de facto unequal access to the polls for NC voters who voted by mail-in ballots. This led to a longer voting period, more lax ballot verification, and even rules changes after significant votes had already been cast versus in-person voters. And whereas the same Board of Election is presently attempting to limit and hamstring legal poll observers in the future. Let's see. And then it goes on to some proposals. Be it resolved that the 6th Congressional District desires the following election parameters be included in law. A lot of them are self-explanatory, but there are 3 that at least I think are pretty important. And these 3 are: voters must provide legal justification for the acquisition of an absentee ballot. The deadline for receipts will be 5 p.m. on Election Day, with adequate ballot request and mail deadlines to ensure receipt at the Board of Elections by that deadline. Number 2, photo voter ID will be required of all voters regardless of voting method. And third and final, a mandatory statewide audit of paper ballots cast in at least 3 random races in every county. And by the way, just so you know, all the 4 of these resolutions passed without debate and without objections. Resolution number 2, this one I'm just going to read the title, pretty much self-explanatory. Resolution supporting the keep 9 U.S. Supreme Court justices. Okay, one's good. Number 3, and this one's important. I'm going to read the whole thing on this one. Resolution proposing an amendment to the North Carolina Constitution allowing for the recall of the governor. This one got the loudest applause of the whole entire evening was this resolution for recall of governor. Because right now we have a lousy socialist named Roy Cooper in that governor's mansion, and boy, let me just say that I watched his State of the State address a couple nights ago, and it's terrible. He talked about systematic. This is just a sidebar from the resolution for a second. Talks about wanting to end systematic racism. Okay. Yet, he never acknowledges that standing right behind him over his shoulder is the first black lieutenant governor in the state of North Carolina, Mr. Mark Robinson. Never acknowledged that. You know, he could have said we've made great strides in North Carolina to combat systematic racism. I mean, look who's sitting right behind him. We have that's to be celebrated. But no, Cooper is too partisan to think straight. Because Robinson is a Republican and Cooper's a Democrat, he didn't say anything. Terrible. Oh, and then a couple times he goes like Farouk Assault on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I want Medicaid expansion right now. We must increase teacher pay. Well, guess what, Roy? The Republican legislature, the last 2 budgets that you vetoed had teacher pay increases. But you vetoed that because you have to have your precious Medicaid. You know, it's crazy. Okay. Whereas the North Carolina Constitution has an impeachment clause, but not a recall provision. And whereas recall is a procedure that allows citizens to remove and replace a public official before the official's term of office ends, and whereas 20 states in the nation allow the recall of their governor, And whereas North Carolina has no provision in their constitution that would allow for a recall of any elected official, and whereas recall is a political device to remove governors, and whereas in states that allow recall of governors, no specific grounds are required, and whereas in most states that allow recall of a state governor, it is accomplished through an election. Therefore, be it resolved that the 6th Congressional District, NCGOP, urges the North Carolina General Assembly to pass an amendment to the North Carolina Constitution that would allow for the voters of North Carolina to vote for a constitutional amendment to add the ability to recall the governor. And also, be it resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to the North Carolina Republican Party for consideration and adoption at its state convention. And the fourth and final but best resolution of the whole entire pack of four is a resolution thanking President Donald J. Trump. And by the way, if you're watching this and you voted for Biden and you're having some buyer's remorse, I hope and pray that this is like the final nudge that's gonna get you to change your voter registration from Democrat to Republican, and hopefully never again vote for a Democrat for president. Whereas in the 4 years President Trump was in office, his policies led to the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. And whereas the president advocated for and passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the first major tax reform in 30 years. And whereas President Trump was tough on immigration, increased the length of the border wall between Mexico, and made agreements with Mexico and countries in Central America that led to a reduction in illegal immigration. And whereas President Trump worked for fair trade and negotiated trade agreements with China, Mexico, Canada, and others that put American interests in the forefront. And whereas President Trump moved the American embassy in Israel to the capital city of Jerusalem and recognized the Golan Heights as being part of Israel. And whereas President Trump carried out policies that recognized the importance of increased religious freedom. And whereas President Trump rebuilt the military and strengthened American readiness and effectiveness. And whereas President Trump pulled the United States out of the Obama-Iran deal that would have led to Iran gaining nuclear weapons. And whereas President Trump reduced the tensions between North Korea and the United States. And whereas President Trump, through executive orders, Congressional Review Act resolutions, and over 860 withdrawals and removals of regulatory actions, reduced regulatory mandates on Americans. And whereas President Trump appointed 3 conservative Supreme Court justices and over 200 conservative federal judges. And whereas President Trump instituted criminal justice reform and judiciously pardoned certain citizens and commuted the unfair sentences of others. And whereas the energy policies of President Trump unleashed the oil and gas production in the United States, making the U.S. a net exporter of energy. And let me add this note, the most stable and lowest gas prices since the 1990s, by the way. Whereas President Trump increased individual freedom with the repeal of the individual mandate in Obamacare. Okay. Whew. Can I get a drink? That was a long list of accomplishments. Wow. But so awesome, right? Well, that is going to do it for this video. By the way, the convention dismissed at 8:22 p.m. It was an hour and 50 minutes. Ran very fast, very efficiently. Once again, thanks to Chairwoman Tina Forsberg for her leadership in putting on this convention. And when this started, I was like, I predict this convention is going to be over by 8:30, and boy, I was pretty doggone close to the nose there at 8:22, right? Anyway, I am the conservative Pelican. Couple videos coming up. I got to cover the Craven County 4-hour and 18-minute long convention. No, the video is not going to be nowhere near as long as that. And also, next week we should have the committee reports for the state convention. Be able to talk about that hopefully next week. This week, get that Craven County video done maybe. Anyway, I am the conservative Pelican. Have a wonderful day.